Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. So, anyway, a couple of days ago I was watching Flambas live streaming World of Warships, and he just had a particularly good game in his gearing, doing nearly 300,000 damage and scoring a boatload of kills. That was a good game. Very entertaining to watch, very exciting. The next match he played was in the Fletcher, and it's this match. Now, no spoilers, but on the live stream, at the conclusion of this match, I said to him, you must send me that replay. Not the gearing game that he just had, where he did nearly 300,000 damage. No. This one. This was the one that I wanted to put up onto YouTube. So, no spoilers, but hopefully by the end of the video, you'll understand why. So, the USS Fletcher. Did you know that in the space of 2 years, between 1942 and 1944, the US Navy commissioned 175 Fletcher-class destroyers? That's just Fletcher-class destroyers, 175 of them. That's not including all the other kinds of destroyers that they built, the destroyer escorts, the light cruisers, the heavy cruisers, the battleships, the aircraft carriers, the seaplane tenders, the submarines, and everything else. 175 Fletcher-class destroyers alone. What were Japan thinking? You know that between 1942 and 1945 the Imperial Japanese Navy built 550,000 tons of shipping. And the US Navy built 3,200,000 tons of shipping. Japan. What was going through your mind when you decided to attack the USA? I mean, seriously, 175 Fletcher-class destroyers in 2 years. And remember, that's just the Fletchers, never mind the William Porters and the Allen M. Sumners and the gearing classes that they built as well. And we're still just talking about US Navy destroyers here, not the cruisers, not the, all of the other ships that they built. Was there ever even a point where the Imperial Japanese Navy was fielding 175 warships of all types and classes combined? I mean, maybe there was, but still, I mean, that's a serious discrepancy in shipbuilding numbers. Japan, you must have been out of your mind. Oh, back to the battle. Attempting to cap Bravo, been spotted by a Yugumo, which probably means there are torpedoes incoming. He's popped his smoke and momentarily been forced out of the cap circle. Now, our first plot twist. Those torpedoes were fired blind. He didn't have a target. He just aimed them down the bearing provided by the radio position finder to the closest enemy ship. And he's just managed to ruin the day of the Edinburgh on the enemy team. There's first blood and a devastating strike. And of course this is why you don't sit broadside on to an enemy destroyer when you're hiding in a smokescreen. Saw those coming a mile away. Well, he didn't, but he knew they were coming, so he took steps. Now he's backing up into the cap again. Further 2 spreads of torpedoes, almost certainly launched by the Yugumo, and he's also avoided those. And there's the Yugumo. And he's about to have a very bad day. Not quite as bad as the Edinburgh, but pretty bad nonetheless. Now, you might be thinking, Japanese destroyer, his biggest advantage is his stealth. So what the hell is he doing firing his guns? Well, he's firing his guns at a Cleveland. And there's not just one Cleveland in the direction that he's shooting, there's 2 of them. Which almost certainly means this guy's been radared, so he has absolutely nothing to lose by firing his guns. Of course, this means there's no way he's getting away. Not with 2 Clevelands and a Fletcher shooting at him. So, I mean, he's burning and he's not even using his damage control. I guess he's just figured out, well, what's the point? And you can kind of sympathise with him. So, kill number 2 for Flambas in the Fletcher. Oh, hang on a second. More torpedoes incoming. Well, it's not the Hipper. The Hipper's too far behind the torpedo track. He couldn't have launched them yet. 2 sets of 4 torpedoes. He's easily avoided them. Who has twin quadruple torpedo launchers on each side? That has to be the enemy Megami. He's got to be out there somewhere, as yet undetected. It's kind of surprising. Well, he can see the Hipper, so he's launched the torpedoes at the Hipper. And he's going to have to start thinking quick, because this smokescreen isn't going to last much longer. And the Hipper is almost certainly running hydroacoustic search, so he has managed to avoid all of those torpedoes. And yep, enemy Megami. This is not good. That's a lot of 152mm guns firing high explosive shells. It's time to DD them out and make ourselves scarce. Well, he's made it out of detection range, but he's holding off on the damage control until the Megami fired his second salvo. And now he gets his rear turret, or one of his rear turrets, and one of his torpedo launchers back up. Gee, it sure would be nice if there was a 16-inch gun-armed battleship sitting around who would be able to put some shots into that Megami and that Hipper. Well, as Agent Willis Huntley's dear old grandmother used to say, wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which one fills up first. The Missouri is, of course, plot twist, AFK. Well, of course he is. The sad thing is, he's in a Missouri, so he'll probably still make a profit out of this game, regardless of whether he's actually at the keyboard or not. Which means Flambas pretty much has to fight 2 Tier 8 cruisers. Well, not exactly by himself. There is a surviving... Okay, not anymore. Now he does have to fight 2 Tier 8 cruisers by himself because both of the Clevelands are now dead. Great. Now what happens next is all going to depend on how smart this Megami is. It doesn't look like he's terribly smart because he's turning broadside onto a Missouri. But he's figured out that the Missouri is AFK, and rather than just farming damage on an AFK Tier 9 battleship, he's gunning for Flambas. An AFK Missouri is not a threat, but a Fletcher-class destroyer, especially at that kind of range, definitely is. And his first hit actually sets him on fire. Well, of course it does. Torpedoes away, but only one launcher. Gonna wait to see what happens if any of these torpedoes hit. And if any of these torpedoes do hit, they're going to hit the Megami in the bow, which almost certainly means they're going to cause flooding. So he's watching to see if the Megami uses his damage control. If he does use his damage control, he knows he can fire a second set of torpedoes and then bug out and just let the flooding finish him off. But the Megami is not using his damage control because this guy is actually quite smart. And he can count torpedoes as well as you and me. And he knows that Flambas has a second set of torpedoes in reserve. Unfortunately for the Megami, he appears to have taken defensive anti-aircraft consumable rather than hydroacoustic search. If he had done that, or if the Hipper had done this, Flambas would almost certainly have been dead. But he didn't, and it wasn't the Hipper. And so the Megami, who played well, but was in the wrong ship with the wrong consumables for the task that he undertook, is Flambas's third victim. He's actually Flambas's team's third victim. Yep, nobody else on the team has managed to sink anything yet. On the bright side, his team are up 3 kills to 2, and they're actually ahead on points. But they're only ahead on points because of the 3 kills. The team don't actually hold any of the cap circles, although they're having a brave attempt at capturing Alpha. The enemy controlled Charlie, and Flambas was kind of forced out of Bravo, thanks to the unwelcome attentions of, well, a Hipper, a Megami, a Yugamo, an Edinburgh, and I think at one point a Richelieu as well. Oh, it looks like the Hipper's arriving to the party again, and slightly too late for the Megami. If he hadn't been farming damage on the AFK Missouri and instead had been targeting Flambas, the previous engagement could have worked out very, very differently. He's managed to avoid the torpedoes, whether by luck or judgment, who can say. The Missouri is burning nicely. Flambas is once again undetected. The question is, did the Hipper avoid the torpedoes because he was running his hydroacoustic search, or was it just dumb luck? He does have a very, very good hydro. And he'd have to be spectacularly stupid to be approaching a smoke screen that was, as far as he's aware, inhabited by a Fletcher that had just managed to torpedo and kill a Megami and not be running his hydro. And if he was running his hydro while approaching that smoke screen, that is the reason why he avoided the torpedoes, it's going to be on cooldown. Now? He's launching his spotter plane. Yep. His hydro is on cooldown. There's no other reason for him to launch his spotter plane. So this is all going to depend on what path that spotter plane takes. Is it going to go left? Is it going to go right? It's just flown out to the length of its orbit, and now it is... Well, if he launched that spotter plane about 15 seconds earlier, they would have seen those torpedoes. But he didn't, and so they didn't, and so that's Flambas's 4th kill.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
Oh, plot twist. While we weren't paying attention, somebody else on Flambas's team actually managed to sink something. Well done, the team are now up to 5 kills. Unfortunately, he died immediately afterwards. Well, of course he did. And the enemy team are now also up to 5 kills, and they're about to make it 6 by burning down that AFK Missouri. The enemy team are now way ahead on points. More than double the point score of Flambass's team, despite the fact that they have actually managed to capture Alpha. Bravo is still unclaimed and uncontested, but yeah, do you really want to go for Bravo? There's a Richelieu over there. And you're air spotted. Yep, it's the Hipper's spotter plane. Okay, he triggers his defensive fire consumable, and that's easily going to shoot the Hipper's aircraft down. And there it is, and he's no longer detected. Yeah, there's a bunch of enemy ships crossing over in the direction of Bravo. Friendly Bismarck actually closing in to engage that Richelieu at close range. It's actually quite an interesting fight because they both have very strong secondaries and at that kind of range very, very good guns. Unfortunately, it's anything but a fair fight because it's not just the Richelieu attacking the Bismarck. He's just been dive bombed, he's getting torpedoed, the Richelieu is emptying his guns into him. That's a Lion emptying his guns into him. Yeah, they're about to make it 7 kills for the enemy team, although Flambass's team does rally briefly as the Iowa on his team manages to claim a kill, but there's still a big old discrepancy in points between these two teams. And given that Flambass's team are down a ship, and Flambass has double the number of kills of the rest of his team combined, it's not looking too good. Flambass selects his next target with care. He's not launching these torpedoes at the Nagato because the Nagato is sailing a course that if he were to suddenly make a small turn to port, could put him on the far side of that island. These torpedoes have been aimed at the Lion. Now the Lion's undetected for the moment, but he's just passing behind the island to the rear of the Nagato. The danger here is that the Nagato is going to spot the torpedoes and warn the Lion. Now these are American torpedoes, so they don't have the spotting range of Japanese torpedoes, but they're still passing awfully close to that Nagato. Did he see them? And it looks like, yeah. Well, that's a shame. Not a complete shame. He did manage to hit the Lion with one of them, but the Nagato almost certainly spotted those torpedoes, and so the Lion took steps to avoid them. But it looks like he's beached. Well, that one torpedo strike did cause flooding, and the Lion did use his damage control. And there's a fire, so that's going to burn. Then again, it's a Lion. Now, it doesn't have a huge amount of health. In fact, it's got the least amount of health of any of the Tier 9 battleships, even with the upgraded hull. But it gets a ridiculous heal. And this is just high explosive and fire damage. It's unlikely to kill him, even if the fire burns the full duration. Now, what's he doing with these torpedoes? The Lion's backing up. The Nagato is on the far side of the island and heading in the other direction. So who are these torpedoes for? Well, they are actually for the Lion. Now, I know you're thinking, wait, nobody's going to be dumb enough to nose out again around a corner that they just got torpedoed from, surely. Well, you'd think so, but put yourself in the Lion's position. You've just taken some torpedoes. You know there's only one destroyer on the enemy team. You know it's a Fletcher. You know it doesn't have a torpedo reload booster. If you've just taken the torpedoes, it must be safe for you to go. He can't possibly have reloaded yet. But what the Lion is failing to take into consideration is how long ago Flambass actually launched that first set of torpedoes, because they were launched at maximum range, and since then he's been reloading, and he's closed the distance to launch his second set of torpedoes. So while the Lion thinks it's entirely safe for him to poke out, it in fact, well, isn't.
Enemy battleship destroyed.
Hooray! Flambass will save us. Well, yeah, no. Maybe not. I mean, it's 5 kills, it's 195,000 damage, but his team are now down to 3 ships. The enemy team have 5, and Flambass's carrier has been spotted and is coming under air attack. There is a third ship still alive on Flambass's team. It's the HMS Edinburgh. But he is, well, if you have a look on the map, about 2 kilometres away from a Richelieu, broadside on to him, with a Frederick the Great and a Missouri shooting at him as well. So that was only ever going to have one very inevitable conclusion, which means that Flambass and his carrier, who, did we mention, is spotted and coming under air attack, now have to fight and kill 4 enemy battleships and 1 aircraft carrier. Oh, and the enemy team have flipped, or are in the process of flipping, all 3 of the capture points. Now, Flambas is in the process of flipping capture point Charlie here, which is, of course, telling the enemy team exactly where the Fletcher is. But he doesn't really have a lot of choice here. Look at the points difference, 199 to 632. He has to stop the enemy team gaining points. At the same time, he's also going to have to start sinking some enemy ships. Well, you know, some more enemy ships, particularly since he's now the last ship left alive on his team, as his USS Ranger aircraft carrier has just been shot down. He's air spotted, but it's only fighters. At the same time, you have to count on, well, the entire enemy team heading in this direction, because he's the last ship left alive on his team. And yep, here they come. Well, he's managed to set the carrier on fire, and he's not blown his defensive AA consumable just yet, because these are just fighters. Although there are some torpedo bombers over there, but it looks like they're returning. Oh, this is going to be tight. Okay, keep an eye on the enemy aircraft. Primarily probably going to be concerned about torpedo bombers here. Shots incoming from the battleships. There are some dive bombers launched. Carriers put the fire out. He pretty much has to go for broke here. The enemy team hold 2 of the caps. He's managed to flip Charlie. So he does have some points coming in, but he's just lost a load of points from having his carrier sunk. He's still holding off on the defensive AA. He's not going to waste it on 1 squadron of dive bombers, and it looks like they missed anyway. Trying to get that carrier set on fire again. Now you'll notice he's fired his torpedoes at the Nagato, and while the Nagato is probably expecting him to be firing his torpedoes at the carrier, it's kind of hard to believe that the Nagato doesn't know that there are torpedoes coming, purely because of the sheer number and volume of aircraft that were overhead. And yet one of those torpedoes has hit. Oh well, we'll take it. It's 243,000 damage. He set the carrier on fire again, although it looks like he's launching torpedo bombers. Yeah. And he's been hit, and his engine's out. Now is probably what... yeah, there it is. Repaired, and triggered his defensive fire. So that should make short work of the torpedo bombers, and he has sunk the carrier. Kill number 6. Now the Nagato, and this is uncomfortably close, and that thing does have a large number of guns. So he pops smoke, which of course means that the Nagato is not going to stay detected for much longer. So if he's going to get his torpedoes away, he's going to have to do it pretty soon. And here they come. Now here's the question. The Nagato did take a torpedo earlier, despite the fact that when Flambas launched his torpedoes, there were swarms of fighters and dive bombers overhead. It is technically possible, I suppose, that none of those aircraft spotted the torpedoes, in which case you can completely understand the Nagato only taking 1 of them. But at the same time, it's also possible that the torpedoes were spotted, and he's just an idiot. Well, you be the judge. Kill number 7, 294,000 damage done. Ah, plot twist. Suddenly, a wild Richelieu appears, and a Frederick the Great. Oh, and here come the torpedo bombers, and they're still looking for a target. And Flambas only has 462 health remaining. Come on, Flambino, you can do it. All you have to do to win is sink 10 enemy ships. That's all. You've carried harder than this before. Well, actually, no, he hasn't. I don't think anybody has. And unfortunately, despite Herculean efforts, this was in fact a defeat. You know, you've got to ask yourself, at some point, what exactly does it take to win a match in World of Warships if 300,000 damage, 7 kills, and nearly 2 million potential damage taken in a destroyer? I mean, that would be a respectable number in a battleship. If all of that still isn't good enough to win, just what exactly is? I don't know. So, answers on a postcard to the usual address. And if you enjoyed that, God knows why you would. I mean, because that was horrific. But if you did enjoy that, and you wouldn't mind seeing more of the same, Flambass's Twitch live stream, link down below in the video description. Flambass, thank you very much for sharing that one with me. It was just as horrific the second time around. I can only imagine. Well, actually, no. I know exactly how you felt because I watched it as it was happening. But for everybody else who didn't see it when it was happening, this is the sort of thing that happens to Flambass in every other game he plays. So if you want to see more of the same, link down below in the video description to his Twitch live stream. And that's it. I'm done. I am drained. I've got nothing left after that. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.